Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
To the flag
States of
of the
America,
United States of
to the
America,
republic for which it stands,
to the
one
republic
nation,
for which it
under
stands,
God, indivisible,
nation.
with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So this is our budget workshop.
Indivisible with liberty and justice.
And I'm going to begin with our E&L director, Elizabeth.
Good evening. How are you?
Good. I mean, just so everybody has this, we set the stage sort of. You don't have to go over anything unless it's something critical or you think we need to really know. The board can ask questions, but if there's something that we don't want to miss anything, but we don't want to go, over things that are not necessary. So if you have something that you want or something that you just want to explain to us, please do so.
Would love just like the basic overview, like not the pencil and pens, but increases and decreases.
Okay. So good evening. As requested by Keith, he asked us to cut our budget 15 to 20% across the board. So we started looking at all our categories, and that's exactly what I did. So my budget went down 16% overall. And if you look at each category, what I did was reallocate materials and supplies, reallocate the conferences, because I thought that spending money on conferences next year, I don't think teachers really want to be out of the classrooms because they haven't had that effect this year. So I cut that as well. But overall, my budget really didn't go down a lot. Anything that I did cut will be supplemented by the grants. Even though we are down one grant this year, I'm anticipating that we'll get that money back next year. And we did have carryover funds from one of the grant, which really kind of floated us until the end of this year and beyond. So we were able to cover a lot of expenses for programs and materials. So overall, I mean, just 16% decrease. And, we're making do with what we have. We're doing really well.
Elizabeth, could I just ask a question too?
Sure.
In terms of the grant, I know a lot of the funding is dependent upon our demographic information, and we're cleaning that up now, right? We have the right amount of students that are being, okay, good.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I've asked him to run reports just to be on the safe side, because I know that the state will be pulling that data from the student repository from level 0. So we've checked that over, and everything is exactly what it should be. But just so you know, I have also spoken to other districts up island, and I don't know if that was the total cause of why we didn't get the grant. Some districts, some really big districts that did put in the right numbers, still didn't get the grant. So I think that they're doing a year on, a year off sort of thing. Immigrant grant is really something that is not given to everybody, and the allocations are lower. So I think that might have been reasoning why we didn't get it as well. So it could have been a combination of both.
Okay, good. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, I'm sorry, John.
Go ahead, Jackie.
I was just going to ask, in terms of numbers, like what's our population year over year? Is it up or down?
This is a record year for us. We've had 106 new ELL entrants come in since September, which by this time it's really high. This time and every year that I've been here, it's been about 75. So right now we're servicing 461 ELL students. You have to understand that 67 of those are students that have exited the program, but we still have to offer services for 2 years. So even though we're not getting funding for them, we still have to provide services for them. So that's what our numbers are now. They're the highest they've ever been in the 8 years I've been here.
So my question is, like, is there anything, like, if the highest numbers ever, and you asked to cut 15%, is there anything that with the less travel and other things, is there anything that you're missing?
No, we're doing really well because I'm supplementing it through the grants. And as you know, Jackie, that I'm a squirreler. So every year I kind of squirrel money away in the grants so that it carries over to the following year. So that's what we've been lucky with. So I have a nice chunk of money that is carrying over. This year, most of it will be spent, but I'll still leave like 10%. And I am going to make some significant recommendations for next year's grant so that the new director really has a solid framework for where to go and what programs to implement. So, and you have to remember that this year we didn't go to museums. We didn't go on field trips. And that was all covered through the grant. We didn't go to the colleges. So all that money is going to be carried over. So that's really what's floating us, that even though I'm 15% lower here, I'm covering it through the grants, even though we only got one.
Are the grants no-year grants? They carry, that you can carry them over indefinitely?
They carry, no. I think that, you know, it's really hard to predict what the state will do. But this is my thought. I think that the state says, oh, look, East Hampton has this much in its reserves. Why? Why aren't they using it? So I think that if we don't use it all, I think eventually they're going to say, well, let's either lower their allocation or let's not give it to them at all. So I don't know why we didn't get that one immigrant grant this year, but I think it was a combination. It was like the perfect storm.
Right.
I'm making sure that before I leave, that money is spent, so that we don't have a lot to carry over. We'll carry over about 10%, which has always been Cindy's recommendation.
Elizabeth?
Yes.
So you were asked to cut 16%, or you could cut 60%.
We were asked to cut.
But I mean, but because of the grants, you feel you can run an effective program.
Yes, sir.
All right? I mean, because if that's not the case, and you've got increased people, you know,
Tell us.
I want to
I
know.
would tell you.
All right, I'm
Well,
not saying
that's when I go begging to Keith.
like giving away money, but we want to service. We want to educate our population, and if we need the money somewhere, you're prepared to ask for it, right?
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Yeah, we don't want anybody to be uncomfortable with the level of.
No, I have no qualms asking for money. You can ask, you can ask anybody. I have no qualms asking for money.
Okay.
I'll be diligent on that. And again, I've made a lot of recommendations. Adam and I have had various meetings. So he's fully aware of where we stand, where we need to go, and what we need to get there. So.
This money's a shift of money like we did last time. So
Right.
It's still here.
Right.
Right, the money's still here, it's just reallocated.
Yeah.
So if I need it, I'm sure that Keith will find a way, just like Isabel did the first year that I got here. The first year that I got here, just so you know, there was really no money in my budget because it had all been spent. So Isabel allocated some funds so that I can start putting together my office. So I have no doubt that Keith would do the same if we really were short next year and we needed something.
Great. Elizabeth, thank you.
That's it?
Any other questions, board?
I'm the little budget that could.
Elizabeth, thank you for your time. and
Thank you
have
very
a good
much.
evening.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Elizabeth.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
Right. Now, special education PBS, is that what we're into now?
Yes, we're going to move into that department.
And same thing goes for you, Cindy. So wherever you want to start.
Really hard in this math to project my voice. So. Oh, but I will give everybody here just what I gave John. And I have a copy for Sarah, JP, and Jackie of this, just so you can see the original. I think it helps explain everything. Helps me explain. Hi, thank you. Hopefully explains it. The difference between last year. So last year, we reviewed your budget, right?
Yeah.
And then that was shortly before the pandemic when things were starting.
Yeah, so when I submit a budget and it's approved, I use that as my Bible. So
Right.
I refer back to that. If somebody asks me for a conference or anything, if it wasn't in that original budget, then I don't approve it unless I can use some grant money.
But in between, when we originally reviewed the budget in our work session last year, and then the pandemic hit, so Isabel made some changes and some cuts to your budget. Okay.
Yeah,
Just
so
so
this
we're on the
is,
same
yeah, so
page.
the budget of 2.077 million
Yeah,
that I just gave you, that was what was submitted last year and approved.
okay.
And then after the fact, when COVID hit, we weren't using some of our contractual providers because some of them weren't available. So we looked at, Isabel took some of that money and then cut it. I didn't even know everything she cut because we just kind of check in with each other and I say, if there's anything extra, you can take it.
Right.
So based on what I originally submitted and then this year's budget, it was originally a cut of over $100,000, which I was very happy about. I worked really hard with Keith and Tim as well, just in terms of where to cut.
Right.
So, but it showed as a $94,000 increase because it went from 2,077 to 1,880.
So you managed this year to run your program properly, right?
Yes.
So the fact that Isabel took this money out, it still was okay, but it can't be the fact that we're gonna hold you to that amount this
Right.
year.
And the one thing that is an increase every year that we can, that we have trouble making up for is BOCES is always increasing.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
between 3 and 4%.
And
So
we have no
I have
control
to
over
kind of, estimate that number because that's based on their budget being approved and all that stuff. So we estimate between 3 and 4%. And I worked with Isabel, now I work with Keith to kind of project that. But, and we find money, like Elizabeth, I try and squirrel money any way we can. If we see mid-year that we didn't pay as much for speech, for outside providers, then we'll use that money towards something else.
Right.
Usually in a typical year, we've gotten it down from when I first started here. Rich and I worked together to really cut what wasn't being spent. So we would use like an average of the last 2 or 3 years of budget and of money actually spent to make the following year's budget. Last year, we can't even predict anything because COVID just kind of hit, and
Right.
some of our things were, when we went ahead with, and some of them we were really in a bind because when we went to remote instruction, some of our contractual providers, which is a large part of my budget besides the BOCES piece, they weren't available. So we saved on some of that. So Isabel took that money. So that brought the budget from being that, over 2 million to the 188. So this year, I'm hoping that we're going to be keeping it and each year going down. We use the grants, the grants besides the E&L and immigrant grants. We use those grants. One of our largest grants, we have actual salaries in there and benefits. So that takes a large part of that. So that we can't use for the creative programming stuff. But the other grants, the smaller grants, we do. And like Elizabeth, we always leave some room for rollover so that we're not using all of it up because just in case something happens, we need that money. But this is really, I worked with Keith in terms of looking at what was actually spent and really trying to cut wherever possible. So
How do we get the grants? You do that or?
yeah.
And Elizabeth?
So Elizabeth, I work with Elizabeth and they're due over the summer and we try and get them in. This year was obviously they were a limited staff to approve them, so it took a little longer. We hope to be approved by October. That's a good kind of calendar for us. But this year we weren't approved till late December. And they didn't even tell us that of things that we had to change if they wanted changed until December. So some of it wasn't even until January, but we use it. We use it for really important things like response intervention, our RTI program, our support program in each building. That's something that, that's not a have to, it's something that we provide for the students so that we can really support them. Those are really important, but we also use the 611, which is the largest grant we have that actually has salaries in it to try and help, with the whole funding for salaries, which as we know, go up every year.
And they're like speech and OT folks.
Right.
They're in the special ed department, and we're again very rich that way too. We have four OTs this week.
We have 2 OTs and 4 speech providers.
Yeah, I mean that's
Right.
healthy.
Psychologists.
They're well staffed.
I'm very pleased with that. We really do meet the needs of the kids, and especially as Cindy was saying, the RTI program. That's preventative. We try to get help to the kid before they do have to be specified. And that is.
And it's a mandate from the state that isn't really funded. So we use the grant money to do that.
So you're comfortable with where your budget is being restored? Basically, we're restoring the budget to where it would normally be in a normal year.
Yeah, and we, since I've been here, we've cut we always wanted to plan for another student registering with us. That has happened, I'm here 10 years, that has happened 7 of the years that I've been here.
Right.
Where one student might move out of district and they might have been a high cost student. And then we were like, oh, okay, we get to breathe a little bit. And then 2 more come in
Right.
and they might be higher needs, but it's pretty much balanced. And, I'm just thankful that we do what's right for the kids. So,
Yeah.
any questions about anything?
I'm just was wondering, so you have the nurses in your budget, right?
Yeah.
And so is there anything, are COVID expenses in there at all, or it's just pure salaries and supplies?
It's mainly what they need to kind of function. It's all of their registration information because my department does registration. We include the nurses' registration information, the materials they need for that. And then last year we had to purchase Lorraine Talmadge's in the high school, her ice machine book. So we purchased an ice machine. So we did it through my budget. It's not the salaries for them, but it's basically everything around.
Jackie, the salaries are in a separate line in the budget, and Keith had money also in overtime, where nurses, like when we're doing the clinics at CDCH and like testing today for the high risk sports, though that they're it's almost like overages for teachers in a way.
So can I ask you a question? Because Rich, on that note, and I can ask it, but that was just sort of a broader question I had with all of this. So where is all the district spent like what? Something like $500,000 or more on COVID this past year. Is that right?
Yes.
So where is that money? Is that all? Is that facilities? Like where is that? Is there a line for that? Or are you pulling it for next year?
So a lot of that money came from Tony's codes, custodial, material supplies and all that. So that's where that came.
And last spring, some came from that's where some of the money was taken.
Right.
The 200,000 that was taken from Cindy was put into that. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and we reallocated money out of my budget this year because we weren't doing PD and bringing in people. He used some of that, pulled it into to Tony's codes to make purchases.
District-wide, we were able to do very little PD this year, correct? Just because you couldn't have people come in.
Yeah.
We did some virtual things, but
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So I had anticipated doing a pause and reassessing anyway before COVID, coming into the new position and seeing where all our funds are being spent, not stopping some of the programs that are going down on John Marshall and the middle school and the high school. So certain things are running and run recurrently, but I really wanted to pause in bringing, people in and stuff. And obviously COVID hit and it made the decision really easy. Tim and I have started preliminary discussions on next year and how we'd like to do it. We've started also discussing that with the principals. It's almost like a restart next year for us on a lot of levels. So we're just going to be, I guess, the infancy planning stage of that now.
I just thinking off the top of my head, because of the COVID, there were extraordinary expenses.
Yes.
Because of the COVID, there were savings too, things we didn't need to do. And so I don't know where we stand, but at some point, we closed the books on doing things. If you didn't buy it by now, you don't need it for this year, right? That message goes out sometime in April or May.
In December.
And so let's take a look. We have the COVID expenses, and because of COVID, we have the extra money. Where are we going to stand? Which is going to eat up which? We're going to be a positive or a negative?
If we get the funding back from the government, from the state, from the COVID costs, we'll be in good shape. And if we don't, if we don't, then we're going to be, we'll still be fine numbers wise, but overall, we'll be okay. But we need to get that funding back. We still know when we're going to get it. We're going to get it now, we're going to get it next year. They were saying 20% a year over the next 5 years. Yeah. That's not going to help us, so we'll get more information as it's going to come. But as of right now, we're not sure what we're going to do.
We'll keep our fingers crossed.
Yeah.
But the numbers don't worry us in terms of having
If you
to
don't
pierce
get
the
it,
cap.
Yeah, we're nowhere near that.
We're okay.
Okay.
We're okay.
So we'll have to
Were
think
we ever
about
able to get any of the funding back
Yes.
for the
It's the
meals?
next year.
the next.
Meals, yes.
Some of it we were able to
did
get
some
back?
money, About 75% of it back on us.
Yeah.
And Christine's still working on it. She's still doing a great job with that.
Right.
Still working on
I know just anecdotally from speaking to other board members in other districts and some administrators in other districts, everyone's saying like next year's when,
Yes. Yes.
like everybody's gonna be okay this year because of the savings making up
Yes.
for, but next year's gonna be where the rough year
Yeah.
comes for those who were lucky enough to be okay this year.
Yeah.
That's what you're hearing.
Especially if we have an increased enrollment.
Yep.
That, I mean,
it. That's another thing. We don't know if enrollment's going to go up or down.
people are still buying houses and building houses like mad out here.
Right.
Which again does help us because the assessment values then go up.
Yeah.
And that Keith and I have had a few conversations that way. It's like, what's, you know, because you have to guess at that.
Right.
And at this point, the town is basically saying, Yeah.
You haven't got it from.
Right.
and it's
So
not, and that's not
so-
May,
Some of next
that we get.
Yeah,
So it's gonna be higher. It's
Right,
past,
it's always
Yeah.
good.
it's tough.
Yeah.
not only new houses, but housing sales, needs are,
Yep.
or tax rolls.
Yep.
That might be good. We're watching that, but we can't, again, we've got to be conservative. You don't know
Yeah.
what you're gonna get.
Absolutely right.
Wish list until like October, so we've got to set our budget now, or in May.
We haven't seen a corresponding increase in enrollment in East Hampton like some of the other districts did.
Not
Not
as
a
big
huge
as
increase.
like Amagansett.
Right, like Amagansett, what, almost double.
No.
We haven't had anything like that.
We
So
still know what's
the
gonna happen.
assessment, you know, is
Mhm.
better.
Yep.
And we also did not get a corresponding increase in enrollments.
That's
We should
correct.
be, that's the best case
So-
scenario.
I'll give you a quick little synopsis. So for last year's budget, we went up about 2 million. Doesn't roll about 2 million. The last one I got from the town, which I call them all the time, I spoke to Jeannie and everyone else in town. And it's only up about $500,000. So we know, I know that we have realtors on our board. I know it's gonna go up. We just don't know, so we gotta be very conservative. It's all estimated.
Right.
So we're gonna have to just make an educated guess.
But yeah, and then the other thing is, we as a board and as a school district, we appreciate the fact that a lot of our taxpayers, maybe even 80% of our taxpayers, don't put kids into school,
Mhm.
and yet they support
That's right.
Yes.
our budget and our educational system. And I think that bodes well for what we do. I think it's because we are efficient. I'm proud of who we are as a school district.
Honestly, it's
Sound
one
like I'm running for an office or something.
of the many reasons why I came here. Honestly, one of the many reasons why I came here, in all honesty.
This is our
Very
financial, this is
Well,
a
that's
responsibility.
the board and everything else. So very well put, John, very well put. All right, so, especially.
So,
questions?
any other questions, special ed, from
No.
board members?
Nope.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Appreciate the time.
Have a good night, everyone.
Yes.
I'm
Good night.
I'm just gonna do mine quick though, if you don't mind, because I have a rather short budget for the board and my office, that I'll be handing over to Adam. So of course, we made drastic cuts since Adam's taking over. He said he could do, with minimal increases, so thank you, Adam. Appreciate the cooperation. But, things are pretty much the same. You can see there's a lot of publications in terms of, what we need, school board, the NISBA, all those types of things. It's very similar from year to year. There's not much difference. We were able to go down a little bit with the Board of Ed, because I know the board, you know.
We took a big cut, it's 20%.
Right? Cut our salaries.
Yeah.
That was mainly because of
You laugh, but lots of people think you get paid.
John, I'm gonna give you a raise.
You get
10
paid.
times. 10 times.
I second that.
10 times 0.
Yeah, we actually moved the background checks.
Good one, Jackie.
We initiated that, I think, 3 years ago, background checks. And for some reason, it stayed in our budget. We moved that over to personnel now. So that's really where that big is.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's definitely worthwhile piece. I'm glad we initiated that. But as you can see, it's pretty, it's year to year, this has been pretty constant.
Now, this reminds me, now that we're saying retirement clock, and last year when everyone retired,
right,
we were
right.
not able to really,
Yeah.
because of COVID, do anything
Yeah.
like, so if we're able to do something this year, can they be included?
Sure.
Yeah,
we could.
last year?
Yeah.
We really, well, we read names out and that really wasn't, a lot of people felt like there was no closure.
I felt, yeah, that was.
Yeah, I mean, we had no control over it, but it'd be nice to.
We can figure out something for that. Yep.
Whatever we're doing this year for whoever
I
retired.
agree, because there was a healthy group last year.
Yeah.
And it's not that many of us.
We have more. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, good suggestion. I agree with that.
Mhm.
We need closure.
Yep. Yeah. We need.
We need a party. That's really what we need.
Right.
Yes, we do.
Well, there used to be a retirement party.
That was-
And
In all
I know.
seriousness, like depending upon what the story is with COVID, in the spring,
right.
maybe there's a way to do a socially distanced outdoor something for the retirement,
Yeah, it would be nice, especially as I would imagine most people will be fully vaccinated.
Right.
I mean, everyone has to protect themselves anywhere, but still.
We're getting close to that. And John, just on the sidebar, a little bit off topic, I was in contact with Peter Van Scoya, and it looks like he's going to be getting more vaccines. So teachers that don't have an appointment, we're only at probably around 50 right now. That vaccination.
Good.
Adam, you mentioned CBS now. Is they taking names or they?
We were up to over 200 and we're testing.
I think we're down
to 50. Yeah.
Remember Johnson's here.
Yes.
Here now.
CBS.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, that's good.
we're able to do it. So we're moving ahead. They really are cooperating. So I'm not sure if you made phone calls too behind the scenes.
I got on public television and
Okay.
made a pitch.
Well, it worked.
So to you like that program, but I mentioned the fact that to Peter, that the great thing is the schools are trying to open full time here.
Right.
And the only real problem, one of them, is the fact that our staff needs to get vaccinated.
Yep.
And so he was
very helpful.
appreciative of that.
So we're
The state is
working
opening
on
up a mass vaccination
In
at Southampton, the college campus.
no kidding.
That's great.
A week or two, they're opening up a mass
Oh,
vaccination.
that's great.
Stony Brook,
So-
Southampton will be running it.
By the time we might be in really good shape
Yeah.
then by the time we get.
May.
So if there's something we
That's
can do outdoors.
Yep.
For those people.
I agree.
We got tents.
Shotgun
Right.
wood.
Right.
We'll figure something out. Okay,
All right.
I think we're up to athletics now.
Happy
Joe
New
Boss.
Year. Good, good. How you doing, everybody?
Good, how are you?
First, I want to thank you very much for always supporting the athletic program. It's really great to see the kids out there again. We just started, and it's been a race since March 1st. It's been exciting. My budget, we tried really hard just to stay. We're negative 1.7%. We really try to be fiscally responsible. There's some things that we ordered last year that we did not need this year that you'll see in equipment. But pretty much we can go anywhere you want in the budget. You can go page by page if you want, but I did try to really streamline as much as I could. I did list some future needs on the first page, put on your radar, as we do every year. The tennis courts here at the high school really be looked at and replaced. We have Band-Aid them for a couple of years now. They really need to be addressed.
Absolutely, sure.
So Joe, can I ask you a question? I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Jack.
So like, if that, like, how does that compare? Just example, it caught my eye, like, so we have new wrestling mats in this budget, and wrestling is a program that I think is has been tentative with COVID. So like, how does that compare as a priority to like wrestling mats?
We had wrestling mats in last year's budget, but I didn't use it. We reallocated that money to the fitness center because exactly what you said, Jackie. We really didn't feel with COVID what was happening. We didn't know what we were going to be doing with it, so we didn't spend the money with it. I did put it back in this year's budget. It is not. It is something we could use because the mats we have are really old and heavy, but it's not a number one priority. Like if you said, Joe, I need to cut some more, that's probably the first place I go.
Yeah, I mean, that's my question too, just looking through it, that just caught my eye, because if you say that tennis courts are a safety issue and kids are tripping, like, why would we spend, it's a lot of money on wrestling mats. That's my question.
I think tennis courts would be a capital project, more of a project that way, it did not in my budget.
Okay,
Just
We've
putting
been
the radar
talking about
for
that
it.
at facilities, actually. Are you able to
Yes.
come on Thursday?
Sure.
9:15?
Yes, please come at 9:15.
Yeah.
We have a couple-
They get us a number yet on the repair, Rich, or the replacement of the tennis courts?
A little over a million.
I think slightly over $1 million, JP.
I know that's where it was supposed to be, so.
But we have to literally dig that, we have to do the base again.
Being
It's
redone.
not a
Yeah.
top.
Yeah,
top-
that-
Small
In
project.
facilities, we did talk about how that needed to be prioritized because we're literally not going to be able to play on them at this point for
Yeah.
safety.
Yeah.
So that does have to go to the top of the list for capital
And
improvement.
that's been talked about over the last, probably since just about I came on the board. Remember, we did that one.
right, we did the repair one year.
Fix the posts
Yeah,
and
we-
taps and- Yeah,
Tennis courts, I was watching the village board meeting, and they were thinking about tearing up.
Yep.
Eventually, we know those tennis courts in the plan
Yep.
is to move them to where the
Yep.
present softball field is. But they actually decided to patch them, and a guy was on there saying, it'll be very safe, we can patch them. And by the way, the junior high uses them. And so for this next year, those tennis courts will be where they are, they will be patched,
is that a definite?
they will have nets.
Is that definite? Because last I had heard they were gonna take them out and Joe was making arrangements for our kids to play somewhere else, so I don't know.
Well, But
Yeah.
I heard them decide, this is
That's tomorrow.
2 days ago, I was watching their meeting, and I don't know if it was a live meeting, but they
Because I think.
definitely stated they were not gonna do that. Now,
Yeah, there was a meeting. They had a meeting about this last week.
And we're
I
actually
wasn't on it then.
meeting, we're meeting
Yeah.
tomorrow. JP asked me to set up a meeting with the new village administrator. And besides him coming, I think Chris Minardi's coming, and so is Jerry.
yeah, sir, am I right? I mean, that's where they're at.
Yeah, no, I believe that's right. I wasn't tuning into that meeting, but I'm pretty sure that is
I
correct.
heard that.
But we'll,
Yeah,
I know that they had a meeting about that the other day.
But so
Maybe that they're just patching it in the meantime while they're deciding about, the longer term plan for that.
Right.
well, just
So,
Exactly.
just so the board knows, Joe did outreach to Buckskill.
Also, we're slated to go to Buckskill because the last conversation I had.
Yeah.
Was that they were gonna be ripped up.
So middle school will have Buckskill to play in if need be.
Right.
So we'll try to
If
get.
they're gonna spend money to patch it, we should let them know so that they don't waste their money on patching it if we don't need it. And the plan is to have new courts for next year. And I think that's what it was, but Rich, I'll leave that to you to have the conversation with tomorrow to find out.
Tennis court for the spring.
Oh,
Then they're
oh,
patching.
well, we're not doing.
All right.
Yep, we're not, don't worry.
Okay.
The other thing on the
They get
future
enough
needs,
money
if
from
I was gonna,
parking.
the other things on future needs was a track replacement. We did the turf this year, it's working. The track really needs to be, looked at again.
It's
So
another tear out.
to put it on your radar, that is another big ticket item. Those are probably 1 and 2, right? Tennis court 1,
Right.
track 2.
Yeah.
We did hold off on the JV softball field, when we realized we might financially need to reallocate that money. And so JV is back at John Marshall, which is fine. We've done it for many years. Ideally, we get him back at the high school, but we did hold on that.
Yep.
So, if I were to prioritize 2, tennis courts and track replacement, those are our future needs.
Yep.
That we would want to look at.
So they're not in the budget this year, but we might need to put them in soon.
Well, I think they,
No. No.
You need to
We
patch
got
There is-
a quote for it last
They
year,
would go on the capital.
and I don't know where the money went at this point, but we stopped our part of it. So,
Keith, I think we do have money for moving forward with the tennis.
So,
Yeah.
That'll be a capital.
are we redoing the tennis courts?
we're talking apples and oranges because we're in 2 different budgets.
Yeah, so that'll be a capital project that we do, we have to add it to next year, but.
Right.
Well, the one we're working on that.
Yeah.
If we're gonna talk about the facilities on Thursday.
Okay. Yeah, whoever can make facilities.
Thursday,
it's always
Thursday
advisable.
facilities
It is a-
we're gonna prioritize capital projects.
Okay, good.
So that's 9:15. Keith?
It's not Thursday.
Well, we can have it right here then.
Yeah.
If you'd like to come.
Yes, perfect.
So any questions? You can see the phys ed is down. I'm just down across the board. If you have any questions for phys ed or health, Bonacon board is probably the one that stayed flat because we do everything with them still. And we try to keep them consistent with the programs that they have. Everything else is pretty much either reduced or flatline. If you have any questions on any of that,
Is, Bonacon board going to Main Beach?
not right now.
I don't think so this year.
Manhawk Ball, all of that stuff is on hold. Unfortunately, Main Beach is in the spring. I don't think it's happening.
Right.
So, any questions, phys ed or health? You want me to go ahead and go through that?
No, we can run through this somewhere, I guess.
Yes. If you want to go to the athletics part, which is where Jackie saw the max, which is the equipment code, I'll tell you what we did there.
I was looking at that and like the fitness center
Yeah.
increase there. I'm just interested in some of the increases that you're proposing and why.
Yeah, Jackie, let me jump in on the, and Joe, because Joe and I talked about, this goes back from last year. The fitness center is very similar to our replacing our buses, but a little cheaper. We have to continually go in and update things in there. We almost had a donation of equipment, but the equipment there is antiquated. So Joe and I kind of, last year, he put stuff in his budget. It was actually in my budget. I moved it over to Joe's just to update equipment. I know Joe ordered stuff. It's just constantly to update some of the stuff because some of the stuff in there that the kids use, I mean, it's used during the day and after school. It's getting dangerous. So it's just an ongoing update.
Yeah.
So, just to piggyback and I'll answer the question about donation. So we just spent $28,000 to get new equipment in the fitness center. So if you look at the wrestling match from last year and the 10,000 we put in the fitness center, that's where that money went. We did the same thing again this year with the wrestling match, another $10,000 to finish it. We were going to get a donation from the fitness center here in East Hampton, and we're all ready to do it, but then someone walked in the door and offered them money for it.
Yeah.
So
So it didn't come.
it was purchased, they purchased it. So that's when Adam and I decided to take the money from wrestling, couple it with the 10,000, which gave 28, and replaced everything. It's really gonna be beautiful. And then if we need to do it again, that's where it is right there. But again, if I couldn't do 28, I wouldn't do 28. But that's how the money is in the equipment code. We did get things last year that I don't need, like the volleyball poles and, the player benches and the hockey goals. So you do see a $20,000 decrease in that code, okay? But if you take the 18 and the 10, that's what we're gonna use for fitness center. It's not necessarily gonna go for max. I don't mean to be deceptive, but that's what we did with it last year.
Well, honestly, I think the fitness center has been one of the best improvements that, we made in the district. Putting it in was, I mean, it's used constantly by,
Right.
teams and athletes, but also just by students that are not on a team that are using it.
Students and staff, and having Lisa there, the big hit, we felt it this year, not opening it to her,
Mhm.
and not opening to our kids. I get asked every time. I'm waiting for the day where we can say yes,
Yeah,
unfortunately right now. But I think getting the new equipment in there is really gonna energize that place again.
but you think for the fall, we should be on target to be able to go back to functioning
We're
as
hoping,
normal
Yep.
as
I
possible,
hope
where
so.
We're
students
looking
and staff and everyone.
we're
can
looking
use it.
that way. Especially the way vaccination.
Right.
It's being sped up.
Because that really it was a huge improvement.
I really think the way we're doing it incremental in terms of, I think we can get a good feel by the spring recess. And then we can say, hey, I think we're going to go. So,
Yeah, I do think it's gonna be slow and steady, and every month that goes by, I think it's better. And I do think there are some things that are here to stay that really are good best practices, whether it's, things that we're doing, sanitizing, things, equipment. I don't think any of it should ever go away.
Right.
I think it's made it better.
like you said,
So but I hope to get back to normal where we have people in the bleachers more and more and kids get playing.
when you just look at the statistics in terms of the actual flu was minimal this year. And that was always one of our, oh boy,
Yeah.
poor John Marshall just didn't want to even go down to visit.
Right.
It was like a petri dish. But we did not have that problem this year.
Right.
So,
If you go to page 22, which is the athletic materials and supplies, that's negative 30%. I really took the time over COVID and really tightened up and see what we had, what we can consolidate. We had some uniforms that were mismatched. I was able to take like the JV boys soccer uniform. We had 3 different sets. I made one really nice set. So I took care of that. And I went down the line and I was able to save some money. Football, right now, we invested in football to the tune of $28,000 last year. We're pushing 60 kids in the program right now.
wow.
So we have a full varsity, a full JV. Obviously, we got new uniforms, new helmets, new pads. So that all comes out of the budget next year because I don't need it again, other than the reconditioning part that I need to do, which is part of the, my responsibility to make sure they're safe. But we did reduce $32,000 in equipment supplies simply by spending the time inventory and everything and making sure that we tightened up as much as we could. I did make some decisions about, what not to give out this year, what to give out this year, and thinking ahead, how we were going to manage long term. So, but I was really happy that we were able to tighten up in that and not feel it. We're fine for next year. So with that,
Do you think, not really a budget question, but do you think the numbers for football will hold next year?
No.
Okay.
What are the numbers, Joe?
We're pushing 60. We got 32 on the varsity, about 27 on the JV. We're a very senior heavy group. A lot of seniors came out. So to answer your question, we'll have a varsity JV, but I think the number's going to be lighter. Almost like.
So it's a little bit more.
Yeah. I got word today that Southampton is not going to have a varsity this year, and they may not have a JV. Hampton Bays next year doesn't have a JV this year, and I don't think they have a program next year. They're struggling with numbers. Greenport doesn't have a varsity. So we did the right thing. Southampton had a chance to combine with us. They didn't. I don't really know what the future is. I just know now it's been great. And I'm hoping to keep it going.
We have no projection about middle school football.
We're looking at about 35, John.
Okay.
With the combined programs, 37 to 12 kids. So that's good. I do with the football program that we do with flag football. We're getting a lot of kids from that flag football that are transitioning into school football, which are translating into numbers.
So we bring from spring, we don't bring from Montauk.
We do combine with Montauk, but I'm only getting a hand, like maybe 2 or 3 kids. Where Springs has, 11, 12, 13 kids that are coming over. We did combine with Pearson this year, which helped us with numbers. There's about 10 kids there, which boosted our numbers from 50 to about 60 kids. So I'm really excited. But to answer your question directly, I don't know if those numbers are going to hold moving forward.
Right.
We'll see. But everything else, is pretty consistent. Our rosters are full across the board. I know Tim and I spoke about tennis today. I did get 4 more girls out today, so that was kind of nice. So I am going to have a JV tennis team. Cross country's a little light, but we have enough to score. But pretty much our programs are in good shape, and I think with this budget, we'll be funded. Is there any place you wanted to go in the budget? Because I really didn't, want to go line by line.
I think we're good. Good?
Anybody have any questions or?
Any questions?
No? All good?
And I wanted to thank everyone who did a great job with the budget.
Great.
Thank you, guys.
So we're in terms of the budget workshops, obviously next week we have a regular school board meeting. And then I think we have transportation and facilities, right? But those are the last 2.
And that's it? We're done after that?
Yeah.
Is there any possibility we could squeeze that into our board meeting?
I'm not sure of the how much we have for the board, so I can't tell you that.
Okay. Is there a possibility?
Let's look.
Oh, but, and then, so we have a board meeting, right?
Yep.
And then in March, the first board meeting, so maybe between one of those 2, we could avoid.
Another night. Yep.
Because it's pretty light.
For that?
2 left is light.
Pretty late.
Okay, we'll look into it. We'll talk tomorrow.
Okay.
Works for me. All right, we good? Can I have a motion to close?
I think we're good.
I'll make a motion.
On the question.
Yeah.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Thank you guys very much. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Feel better, JP.
Thank you. Take care.
No, good luck.